My name is Derek, and this is the Precision Rifle Garage Build Series. Now, what this is a follow along as I build a precision rifle from scratch using mostly basic tools, the exception of a lathe, which is kind of a must on gunsmithing. However, as you'll see, my lathe is definitely on the smallest side possible to do gunsmithing. The goal is to make a short barreled 308 and to get about 1.5 to 1.25 MOA. This is not an instructional on how to build a bench class or F class hunting rifle. This is to show my beginner mistakes, ideas, and performance of an overall build from the bottom up. Let's go over the components. So for the action, we're using a Ultimatum HMB action. It's a 2-lug REM 700 footprint with a DCLI tin coating on the inside. Very nice, very sharp looking. A TurkeyTech field trigger. The action has a wire EDM bolt raceway, concave bolt head, and hard anodized 20 MOA rail attached to it. For the barrel, we're using a 30 cal 1 in 10 twist IBI raw barrel blank. It will be chambered in 308, and it should be a lot of fun. The only thing pictured here that's not here at the moment, it will be the bottom metal. That's on its way. We will be building the stock from the bottom up, and that includes the Baltic birch laminate that we see behind me. So we'll also be doing some stock building. So stay tuned, follow along. So let's get to some barrel work. So this is my setup on the lathe. As I was saying, this lathe is just big enough to awkwardly do gunsmithing. Right now, I have the barrel set up in between centers. The barrel is 19.5 inches in length right now, and as you can see, our tailstock is all the way back, so it is just the limit of what this lathe can do in between centers. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I not passing this through the chuck? Unfortunately, the barrel is too large right now to pass through the chuck. Also, not super trustful of the Chinese chuck that this thing has. In my thoughts, in my uneducated thoughts, running in between centers is our best shot. Now, I want to be accurate, so I'm trying to figure out what error we have either in the system of my lathe or of the barrel. So I've set up a dial indicator and I've marked our spots, our low spots. In this case, we got about 10, 11 thou under our 0 mark as our low spot. And then as we move up, our high spot, we're about 3 under. So a bit of difference there. So we'll measure at the chuck end, and then we will flip our barrel to see if it is a centerline bore issue or if it is something in my setup. So I've set up our indicator on the chuck end of the barrel against the dead center and have indicated it, and I've marked my high, which is about 1 thou above 0, and marked my low, which is about 8. So difference about 9, very close to our other end. And if we have our look, our low markings, as noted by the blue paint pen, and our high markings match. So at this point, I'm assuming it's the barrel center is possibly a little bit out. Let's do some more investigating. Now, if we have a look against our chuck face, I've put a blue paint pen mark, and on our dead center, put a corresponding mark and a blue mark on the barrel to time everything together, just to check if it's our system. Going to rotate the mark out about 180 degrees and have a look just to make sure our dead center is not off. If our high spot is still our high, which looks to be about it, and our low spot is our low, which looks to be about correct. So at this point, I'm going to infer that it is in fact the barrel center line is a little bit out from the OD right now, and back to timed, and it's looking like that is the case. So I took our barrel out. We're going to flip it end for end. So what was at the tailstock will now be at the chuck. So you can see our letters are upside down now for our low spot. Let's check to see how that does. Now with our barrel flipped end for end, gonna check, and our low spot looks to be about our low at 8 there, and back to our high spot at about 16. So it seems that it's pretty consistent across the barrel. So our last check we're going to do is going to move that dead center just to see if that's going to change things. So now I've moved my dead center in the chuck 180 degrees. So you can see our line on our center is no longer matched up line on our chuck. And if we have a look, our spots are pretty close. They're low at 85 and our high at 86, 87. We've appeared to have gotten some better run out there. There might be something going on. Maybe 84 on the low. Still very close. I've kept my timing mark same with my center just to rule out any error in the chuck. Back on over to the tailstock end, and our high spot is still pretty much our high spot, and same with our low spot. So not a whole lot of change there. So I've moved our center back to its original position, and our low spot is still our low spot, and our high spot is still our high spot. However, we went from basically 3 or 4 to back to 9. However, that more so matches what the tailstock is doing, that live center, which I trust more. Now, what just happened, I think, is to do with my chuck on this lathe. I had some issues. I think I did some work that was a little bit too heavy for it, and I think I messed something up. So where the center timing mark is where it was machined. This dead center was made in this lathe at that position. So I'm going to keep the barrel at this position, because essentially I have 8 or 9 thou in the same spots across the barrel, just for more consistency. I may be wrong. Again, this is a garage amateur build. However, my thoughts are, if basically I want to keep the center line in that barrel, assuming that the center line of my lathe centers are true enough. So if I were to go the other position and actually reduce my run out here, my worry is that my bore would not be true to the OD of the barrel. This is going to give me the best result with my amateur knowledge and skills. Now, a lot of you are going to hate me for this, but my initial plan was to use a lathe dog in order to turn the barrel in between centers. But the problem with that is that's a lot of weight, and it puts quite an imbalance on this small, cheap lathe. So, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to weld a drive lug onto the end of my barrel. Now, it's definitely going to trigger a lot of you. However, this is going to be the chamber end. This will be faced off, the relief for the bolt head, and obviously the chamber will be cut, and the barrel will be shortened on this end. So any heat I've imparted that area will mostly be cut out. I just basically want to make sure that I'm not contacting my center, and I got a little bit of free float between the welded on pin and the jaws of the chuck, so I'm not throwing anything off of misalignment. So I got bolt cut, welding on, check the clearance in between the center and the jaws. We get a little bit of movement. Checked with a paint pen transfer test, and we have clearance, and then cleaned up the opening of the barrel bore a little bit with a counter bore. So that should be clean, should be good to go. And do a little spin test. Definitely not shaking like the lathe dog would have. So, got that set up, ready to start turning. I put the tool on the right side of my tool post so I can catch the tailstock end, because if I have it on the left side, unfortunately I run into my tailstock. Not going to be the greatest. However, that means I'm going to have to stop short of the chamber end, because otherwise I'll run my tool post into the jaws, and that's not good. So I'll have to change sides with my tool bit on the tool post. This barrel came with this little bit of lathe turn on it already. So whole idea right now is just going to get the diameter reduced to clean that up, and we all have an even diameter. Alright, so let's check to see if we're at desired for now, which would be 1.25 inches. Pretty close. Let's swap the side of our tool bit. Get nice and cozy. Up to the chuck. All right. A couple mistakes. I offset the tailstock 14 thou instead of the calculated 142 thou. And I offset the tailstock away from me instead of towards me. By measuring, I realized my cut depth at the chuck was deeper than at the tailstock. And at that point I realized what I had done wrong. I made a test cut at 14 thou in the correct tailstock offset direction. It worked out good. However, I realized I needed to be at 142 thou. So I added an additional 130 thou to make that correct, to get the correct taper. I've opted now to place a steady rest and only do part of the barrel and then jump over to the other half of the barrel and move the steady rest just ultimately to reduce the chatter that I've been having. A little bit of roughness there. Not perfect. We can definitely see chatter lines on there, so we'll take a file and some sandpaper to do our final finishing anyways. Okay, since we're done setting up the profile of the barrel, bring our tailstock back into alignment. I'm going to do this roughly off the hop. What I'm basically going to do is I made 2 measurements on the barrel, 20 thou apart. Right now, since it was obviously cut and the tailstock is still set, there is 0 difference on the dial indicator from one spot to another. So at this point, I'm basically going to move the tailstock and check until I get 20 thou difference between another. Then I know the center line of the shaft is straight. So, and also I know approximately we're 140 to 150. So watch that movement right now, and hopefully that'll get us fairly close.
Makes my life a whole heck of a lot easier. That shroud wasn't in the way.
Let me get a bit.
Hopefully loosen there off a little bit. Let's check.
0 to 70. That's 10 thou. And that was part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, in which we thread the muzzle, thread for the action, and chamber the rifle.